The morning sun crept across the Aniston office, casting a pale light on the cluttered chaos that marked the FBI's response to what had transpired at Lake Norman. The field team had regained consciousness, disoriented and embarrassed. Reports flooded in from every operative who had been at the scene, their voices tinged with confusion and a touch of panic. The words, unidentified drones and unauthorized sedation kept surfacing, creating a storm of speculation that rippled through the corridors of the FBI. Sitting in her office with a furrowed brow and clenched jaw, Gina listened as Mr. Tennis relayed more details. The recovery team had no leads. Whatever team had moved in was precise, coordinated, and left no trace. She pushed back from her desk, eyes flicking toward the live surveillance feeds that offered no insight. Her fingers tapped a frantic beat on the arm of her chair. Emily Hayden's face appeared on the screen before her, and the director's expression was unreadable but taut with suppressed emotion. "Gina," Emily began, her voice low and clipped, "explain to me how an operative was taken from under our noses without a single shot fired." Gina's eyes narrowed, fighting the urge to lash out. "Director, we were monitoring the situation, and then everything went dark. Our field agents were tranquilized. Whoever did this, they're beyond anything we've seen before." Emily's silence was heavy, the kind that filled a room with accusation. "Dwayne," she muttered, the name like a bitter taste in her mouth. "Has he gone rogue too? What's the reason? He moves with a purpose, and he is too precise, too methodical." Gina clenched her fists. "If he was behind this, then why not leave a signature? Why take Kendall without turning it into a statement like they did before?" Emily's eyes sharpened, narrowing with a hint of something more, a mixture of respect and frustration. "Because he's smarter than that. Dwayne doesn't need glory, he needs control." Gina felt a chill run down her spine. If Emily was right, they were dealing with more than a simple renegade operation. They were facing a force that operated in the dark, with resources and precision that rivaled their own. "What's our next move?" Gina asked, her voice softer now, almost resigned. Emily leaned closer to the camera, her tone shifting from accusatory to resolute. "We continue to observe. We wait for him to make the next move. He's too connected to that network of his now, but I believe that he is still one of us at heart. If he wanted to kill, people would be dead. Right now, we're still in the game." Across town in an undisclosed location, Dwayne sat at his control desk, eyes scanning the live feeds of the FBI's internal scramble. His face was impassive, but his heart thudded in his chest. The mission had succeeded, but at a cost. The FBI was more vigilant than ever, eyes searching, ears listening. He knew this cat-and-mouse game would only get more dangerous. Marcus stepped into the room, a grim look on his face. "We know that the FBI knows that we were there. They might not have proof, but they're not stupid. What's the next play?" Dwayne's eyes flickered with determination. "We stay ahead. We don't escalate unless we have to. And we protect our people at all costs. It's time to prepare for whatever comes next." The room was quiet, the tension palpable as each team member processed the reality of their situation. They were no longer just an underground network fighting for justice. They were now on a collision course with one of the most powerful agencies in the country. The stakes had never been higher. Dwayne stood in the control room, eyes sweeping over the monitors and the steady hum of machinery that underscored the tension in the air. One by one, the operatives filtered in, taking their places with grim expressions and the shared understanding that the stakes had never been higher. The weight of anticipation pressed down on the room, each second heavy with unspoken questions. Aaron entered, his stride purposeful but shadowed by an undercurrent of fatigue. Dwayne's gaze locked on him immediately, eyes sharp and probing. "Where are you right now?" Dwayne's voice cut through the quiet murmur of the room, direct and commanding. "Is your agency looking for you?" Aaron's jaw tensed for a moment before he responded, shifting his weight slightly as if grounding himself for what he was about to say. "I've been maintaining low-level contact. They're not actively searching for me, not yet. They think I'm on personal leave due to the injuries. But we can't assume that will last." Dwayne nodded, absorbing the information with a measured expression. The lines on his face deepened as he calculated their next steps. "Good, but we need to be ahead of this, Aaron. If they decide to come looking, we need to make sure we're ready. Aaron's eyes flicked to the operatives around them, then back to Dwayne. I've got a few loose ends tied up, just in case, but I know we need more than that. Dwayne exhaled, tension still coiled in his chest. He looked at the gathered team, each member waiting for their next directive. All right, everyone, listen up. We will keep pressing forward, but we're doing it smart. We stay vigilant, stay mobile, and stay one step ahead of anyone who thinks they can catch us off guard. A murmur of acknowledgement rippled through the room as the team refocused, eyes hardening with resolve. The mission was ongoing. Every member knew that being unprepared meant being left behind in this game. Dwayne turned his attention to the main screen and spoke with a steady, deliberate tone. Deuce, give me the details on the next case on the schedule. Renee McBride. Deuce's synthetic voice chimed in, clear and courageous as it relayed the data. Case profile, Renee McBride. Location, Dearborn Heights, Michigan. Date of incident, November 2nd, 2013. Subject was a 19-year-old African-American woman who, after being involved in a minor car accident late at night, approached a nearby residence for assistance. The homeowner, startled by her presence, claimed he believed she was attempting a break-in. He fired through the locked screen door, striking McBride and causing fatal injuries. Dwayne's eyes narrowed, the gravity of the case sinking in as Deuce continued. The operatives around the room exchanged looks of recognition, some nodding in silent acknowledgement of the familiar details. The homeowner, identified as Theodore Thomas Wafer, was charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. During the trial, Wafer's defense argued that he acted out of fear and confusion. Despite public outrage and protests calling for justice, the jury returned a guilty verdict for second-degree murder. Wafer was sentenced to 17 to 32 years in prison. The room was silent as Deuce wrapped up the summary. Key individuals associated with the case include surviving family members who were vocal advocates for reform and local law enforcement officials who faced scrutiny for their handling of the investigation. The case fueled ongoing debates on racial bias, self-defense laws, and the value placed on Black lives. Dwayne's jaw clenched as he absorbed the report. He glanced around at the team, each face reflecting a mix of determination and sad recognition of the stakes involved. This wasn't just a name on a list, it was a case that resonated deeply with the mission they were undertaking. Deuce, do we have current intel on Wafer and any associates tied to this case? Dwayne asked, already considering their next move. Affirmative, Deuce replied. The primary target, Theodore Wafer, remains incarcerated at a state correctional facility. However, there are indications that certain figures involved in the initial investigation have resurfaced in key local positions, maintaining influence in the area. Dwayne nodded, already piecing together a plan. We need to track any signs of movement around these key players. If our operative is targeting someone, we need to anticipate their approach. The room remained tense, but the team stood ready, eyes fixed on Dwayne as he prepared to direct them through the next phase of their mission. Dwayne's brow furrowed as he absorbed the information Deuce had just provided. The air in the control room grew heavier, the tension palpable among those gathered. He glanced at Aaron, who looked equally troubled. Deuce, do we have an operative in the area with the initials of RM? Dwayne said, voice tight with concern. Affirmative, Deuce replied. Operative Rachel Morgan is currently employed by the Michigan Department of Corrections, serving as the third shift coordinator at the facility where Theodore Wafer is incarcerated, Deuce confirmed, its mechanical voice unwavering. A murmur spread through the room as agents exchanged worried glances. The coincidence was too stark to ignore. Of all places, Aaron muttered, shaking his head. Dwayne crossed his arms, eyes narrowing in thought. This isn't a coincidence. Rachel is deep cover, and if she's there for a reason. We need to figure out what she's planning. One of the tech analysts stepped forward hesitantly. Sir, if she's embedded that deeply, getting to her without alerting Wafer or raising red flags will be challenging. Dwayne's jaw tightened as he weighed their options. He turned to Aaron. What do we know about her? Her tendencies, her past missions? Aaron nodded, recalling the operative's profile. Rachel is meticulous and calculating. She doesn't make a move without planning every detail. If she's decided Wafer needs to be handled, she won't hesitate. But she's not known for being reckless. There might be a window for us to intervene. Deuce, Dwayne said, eyes never leaving the screen. What's the current status at the correctional facility? Any unusual activity? Are there any signs that Rachel is preparing to act? Deuce's processing icon flickered for a moment before responding. Current data shows routine operations within the Michigan Department of Corrections. No immediate anomalies were detected. However, given Rachel Morgan's skill set, subtle signs may be easily missed. Dwayne exhaled slowly. The stakes were high, and any wrong move could spell disaster. We can't approach this directly. We need eyes on the inside and a way to get a message to Rachel without tipping her off. Aaron leaned in, his expression serious. What's the play, Dwayne? Dwayne's eyes swept the room, taking in each member of his team. We're going to do what we do best, think ahead of her, but we need to tread lightly. Rachel isn't just any operative, she's one of ours. We need to ensure she doesn't become a liability. He turned back to the screen, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on him. Deuce, find me a way to contact Rachel indirectly. If we're going to prevent another disaster, we need to reach her before she acts. Dwayne's voice was steady but urgent. Deuce, give me a full profile of operative Rachel Morgan with her complete background. Before Deuce could respond, the secure line buzzed, breaking the quiet tension in the control room as Celeste's voice filled the space. Dwayne, I'm calling for an update. What's the status? Dwayne leaned forward, eyes on the screen as he spoke. We have a lead on Rachel Morgan. She's currently working as the third shift coordinator at the Michigan Department of Corrections, the same facility where Theodore Wafer is located. A pause hung in the air before Celeste's voice returned, tinged with surprise. Rachel, I didn't even realize she was still undercover. 1 second, please. The line clicked, and Dwayne realized Celeste had added Rachel to a three-way call. Before anyone else could speak, Celeste's tone turned sharp with authority. Rachel, your mission is over. Whatever you are doing, stop it immediately and return to base. You will be compensated when you arrive. Yes, ma'am. I'm on the way. Rachel's voice came through, calm and compliant. A faint chuckle from Celeste followed. I've moved so many chess pieces over the years that sometimes I forget who's on or off the board. She ends the call. Deuce's voice comes over the comms with a sense of urgency. Agent Williams, while reviewing the files for the James Farrell case that Fletch was involved in, there was a footnote added. It mentioned the Jakia Ferris case, also in Charlotte, North Carolina. I don't believe Fletch is assigned to that case as well, but it may have been a contingency for the network. Dwayne inhaled. He is well aware of the Ferris case, but he wanted to give Deuce the opportunity to give the update to the room while he gathered his thoughts. Deuce, could you give us the case update relating to Jakia Ferris, please? The room falls silent as Deuce's synthesized voice begins the briefing. Its tone is measured and factual, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. Case profile: Jakia Ferris. Incident date: April 20th, 2021. Location: Columbus, Ohio. Jakia Ferris was a 16-year-old black girl involved in a domestic dispute outside her foster home. Police were dispatched to the scene following a 911 call reporting an altercation and a potential stabbing. Deuce pauses briefly, displaying photos and diagrams on the monitors as it continues. Body camera footage from Officer Nicholas Raynor, who was first to arrive on the scene, shows Jakia holding a knife during the confrontation. As Officer Raynor approached, Jakia appeared to lunge at another individual. Officer Raynor fired 4 shots, striking Jakia. She was pronounced dead shortly after. The room is heavy with the weight of the details. Deuce continues, unfazed by the growing tension. The other officers involved were identified as Sergeant Alan Reese and Officer Thomas Doyle, both present during the incident but not directly responsible for the shooting. Initial statements from the officers and witnesses cite the chaotic nature of the scene as a contributing factor to the use of lethal force. The monitors shift to social media posts, news headlines, body cam reels, and protest footage. Deuce's voice remains calm. The incident sparked significant public outcry, with debates focusing on systemic racism, police use of force, and the broader implications of law enforcement's response to situations involving black youth. Demonstrations erupted nationwide, demanding accountability and reform. Dwayne leans forward, his jaw tightening as Deuce delivers the final piece of information. No charges were filed against Officer Raynor. The investigation concluded that his actions were justified under department policy due to the perceived immediate threat to another individual. The case remains a point of contention and has become a symbol of the intersecting issues of race, policing, and systemic inequality. Deuce falls silent. The images on the monitors looping back to the beginning of the briefing. The operatives exchange somber glances, the gravity of the case settling over the room like a heavy fog. Dwayne noted Deuce's words, eyes scanning the room as everyone shifted back to focus. The weight of the moment settled, but there was no time to pause. He cleared his throat. All right, everyone, let's move on now. We have a new case and potentially 3 targets. We need all eyes on this now. Jesse smirked, leaning back in his chair with a satisfied look. I knew that felt too easy. Rachel didn't even flinch. It makes you wonder if she's been waiting for that call for a while. But as soon as we get one break, something else pops up. It never ends. Aaron nodded, arms crossed, as he considered the quick resolution. Yeah, we can't get too comfortable. Just because Rachel said okay doesn't mean we're out of the woods. People who are deep under always have a backup plan. We need to make sure she's really on her way and not taking a detour. Dwayne glanced at both of them, his expression serious. You're right, we'll keep tabs on her route. Deuce, make sure we're tracking Rachel's movement. If she veers off course, we need to know. Deuce's voice responded with mechanical precision. Understood. Monitoring operative Rachel Morgan's movements, tracking active. Jesse let out a small chuckle, running a hand through his hair. I still can't believe how quickly Celeste flipped that switch. It's like she's got us all on strings. Aaron's jaw tightened slightly. Yeah, and that's what worries me. It's easy to pull strings until they get tangled. Dwayne's eyes darted between them. That's why I'm here. It's why we're not just playing defense anymore. We're trying to stay ahead. Now let's get ready to dive into this Ferris case. We need to anticipate every move before our operative does. The room fell into a brief silence as everyone absorbed the words and then got back to work. A shared sense of determination in the air. Dwayne straightened in his chair, the hum of the control room vibrating beneath his fingertips. The screens around him flickered with streams of data, surveillance feeds, and dossiers. He took a deep breath before speaking. Dwayne's voice breaks the silence, his tone sharp and questioning. Deuce, why is this case barely more than a footnote in the files? This should have been flagged. Deuce processes for a brief moment before responding. One possible reason is the current status of the 3 officers involved in the case. All of the officers have relocated to North Carolina, specifically to the Charlotte area. Further analysis suggests that both the Farrell and Ferris cases may have been intended for resolution on the same day. The operatives exchange uneasy glances as Dwayne absorbs this information, his brow furrowed. He takes a step closer to the monitors. What are the exact locations of these officers? I want specifics. Deuce's voice resumes, calm and precise. All 3 officers, Nicholas Raynor, Alan Reese, and Thomas Doyle, took early retirements shortly after the conclusion of the Ferris case investigation. They currently reside in a gated community in the southern outskirts of Charlotte. Officer Raynor, now retired, still consults on cases for the local Charlotte Police Department, providing expertise on high-stakes response protocols. Dwayne's jaw tightens as he processes the details. His voice drops, steady but resolute. A gated community. Great, that complicates access, but it also means their movements are predictable. Deuce, I need their schedules, patterns, and any consulting work Officer Raynor has been doing for the Charlotte PD. Also, cross-reference with their gated community's entry and exit logs. Deuce confirms immediately. Understood. Retrieving data now. Preliminary results indicate Officer Raynor has maintained semi-regular communication with the Charlotte PD, attending case briefings and training seminars. Entry logs from the gated community suggest minimal travel for all 3 individuals, with most movements limited to predictable routines. Dwayne nods. the weight of the revelation settling over him. So they've been hiding in plain sight, laying low while continuing to benefit from the system. Perfect. Let's not let them stay comfortable. He turns to the team, his tone commanding. We need a detailed plan for the Ferris cases. If these officers were targets for the same day, it means whoever is planning this has coordinated access to their locations. We're not letting this escalate. Get me surveillance on that gated community. I want to know everything. Security measures, visitor logs, even their preferred takeout orders if it helps. The room moves with increased activity as the team springs into action, pulling up maps, security layouts, and schedules. Dwayne remains at the center, his focus unwavering. This isn't just about preventing another tragedy, he says, his voice low but firm. It's about exposing the system that let these men walk away unscathed. Let's make sure they don't get away with it this time. Dwayne's eyes narrowed as he listened, the room buzzing around him. Aaron leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing as he glanced at the screen. You know what's weird, Jesse? The McBride case and the Farrell situation are too similar. Different circumstances, yeah, but the same underlying pattern. Jesse nodded, rubbing his jaw thoughtfully. You're not wrong. Both cases involve someone looking for help and ending up dead, and these people's reaction is just overkill. It's like the same playbook, just different cities and victims. And now this one. This little girl was having a mental health moment and died. Make it make sense, fam. Aaron frowned. What are the chances that both operatives were assigned to cases that echo each other this closely? Do you think Deuce is malfunctioning? Maybe cross-referencing cases wrong? Jesse snorted, shaking his head. Deuce, broken? That thing is practically flawless, but it's strange, I'll give you that. If anything, I think it's intentional. Maybe Celeste or someone higher up had a reason for setting things up like this. Aaron crossed his arms, a hint of concern in his voice. But why? Are we missing something here? Is there a bigger pattern that we're not seeing? And why a contingency? Jesse's eyes hardened, leaning in toward Aaron. Or worse, what if these operatives see the pattern themselves and go rogue? We can't afford to underestimate what might happen next. Dwayne exhaled, leaning forward with his elbows braced on the table. The weight of the mission pressed into his chest, each new detail adding to the intricate web of decisions that would shape the coming days. His eyes swept the room, taking in Marcus, Aaron, and Jesse's thoughtful expressions as they digested the new information. These men could be targeted any day now, Dwayne said, his voice steady but intense. We need to intervene before our operative or anyone else makes a move. We have to be 2 steps ahead. Aaron crossed his arms, eyes narrowing as he considered the profiles of former officers Raynor, Reese, and Doyle displayed on the monitors. If Kendall was this careful and precise, and then Fletch, and whoever is next, might be even harder to stop. We can't underestimate how deep this runs. Jesse nodded in agreement, his jaw tightening. And if the last case was anything to go by, there could be more to this than just taking down these officers. Dwayne turned his gaze back to the monitors, eyes shifting between the profiles. Agreed, first, we gather intel on all locations, each of their residences and the police department. We need eyes on both places, and we need them now. Deuce, identify the best entry points for non-lethal intervention. Surveillance protocols initiated, Deuce confirmed. A preliminary assessment will be available as soon as I gather enough data. Aaron and Jesse exchanged a quick glance, knowing that every second counted. The room grew with tension, the reality of their task settling heavily in the air. Dwayne stood straighter, his mind already spinning through contingencies, eyes burning with determination. We move fast and we move smart, Dwayne declared. We're not losing anyone on our watch. Not the targets and definitely not the operatives. And speaking of operatives, Deuce, who do we have in North Carolina with the initials of JF? Deuce's voice filled the room, steady and factual. There is only one operative in North Carolina with those initials. Profile for operative Jonas Fields initiated. A series of images and detailed bullet points appeared on the central screen, depicting a man of average height, lean build, and sharp eyes that spoke of a lifetime of observation and precision. Operative Jonas Fields, Deuce continued, age 34, background, former Army intelligence with a specialization in counter-surveillance and reconnaissance. Fields was discharged with honors after 10 years of service, and he was noted for his expertise in tactical infiltration and psychological profiling. He was recruited by the network 5 years ago due to his exceptional skill in high-risk covert operations. Known for his adaptability, Fields has successfully embedded himself in multiple environments without detection. Dwayne's eyes narrowed as he absorbed the information, each detail adding another layer of complexity to the mission. Deuce's voice droned on, reciting the more personal aspects of Fields' file. Operative Fields was born and raised in Prince George's County, Maryland. Personal connections, limited. Maintains a minimalist lifestyle, favoring practicality over attachments. Psychological evaluations suggest a solid moral code with a particular focus on justice, albeit one that operates outside conventional boundaries. Recent assignments include deep cover in high-profile law enforcement cases, positioning him as a community volunteer to build trust and gather intelligence. Dwayne glanced at the images that flashed by, Fields blending in with local groups, dressed in the unassuming attire of a neighborhood watch volunteer, his eyes continually assessing. "Deuce," Dwayne said, voice low. "What's his current location and cover?" Current location, Charlotte, North Carolina. Cover identity, social worker and crisis intervention specialist for at-risk youth. Fields has integrated himself within local support networks, providing him access to both community leaders and local authorities. A heavy silence followed, each operative in the room piecing together the implications of Fields' cover and how close he was to his potential targets. Dwayne's mind raced through scenarios, each one fraught with the possibility of exposure and failure. "This is a man who doesn't miss," Aaron muttered, breaking the quiet. Dwayne nodded, the gravity of the situation settling over him. "Then we better not miss either." Dwayne's eyes shifted to the screen, his expression focused as he spoke. "Deuce, what's our best approach for bringing in Fields? He's not hiding, and by all accounts, he's actively working to create change in the community. What's the read on this?" Deuce's synthesized voice responded evenly. "Analysis indicates that Jonas Fields may no longer be following his original mission orders. He appears to have deviated, embedding himself within local government and community initiatives. Probability suggests he has ignored previous directives." Dwayne nodded. The tension in the room was palpable. "Understood. Aaron and Jesse, I need you to get in touch with Fields. Make it clear that the mission is off. He needs to know we're pulling him back in." Dwayne then states, "Aaron and Jesse, do you guys mind giving Fields a call to let him know that the mission is off?" Aaron nods, and he and Jesse exit the room to go into a room adjacent to the control room. Deuce's mechanical voice responded promptly, its tones even and precise, resonating through the room. "Patrolman Nicholas Raynor is residing at his family home near the outskirts of Charlotte. His medical records indicate treatment for chronic back pain following an on-duty injury and repeated mental health episodes. He attends therapy every Wednesday." Alan Reese, one of the other officers involved, after dealing with a prolonged episode of fentanyl and alcohol addiction, attends a weekly Alcoholic Anonymous meeting at the Charlotte Police Department headquarters. He is the lead sponsor. His current location is the Charlotte Police Department headquarters. After an ugly divorce case, Thomas Doyle now lives alone in a small, tiny home. There isn't much activity of him on file. This profile suggests that he has become reclusive and stays away from people. Dwayne exhaled, leaning forward with his elbows braced on the table. The weight of the mission pressed into his chest, each new detail adding to the intricate web of decisions that would shape the coming days. His eyes swept the room, taking in Aaron and Jesse's thoughtful expressions as they digested the new information. "These men could be targeted any day now," Dwayne said, his voice steady but intense. "We need to intervene before our operative or anyone else makes a move. We have to be 2 steps ahead." Aaron crossed his arms, eyes narrowing as he considered the profiles of Raynor, Doyle, and Reese displayed on the monitors. If Kendall was careful and precise, Fletch was extra meticulous and diabolical. This guy might be even harder to stop. We can't underestimate how deep this runs. Jesse nodded in agreement, his jaw tightening. And if the last case was anything to go by, there could be more to this than just taking down these officers. Dwayne turned his gaze back to the monitors, eyes shifting between the profiles. Agreed. First, we gather intel on all locations. Raynor's residence, Doyle's tiny home, Reese's house, and even the police department. We need eyes on everything, and we need them now. Deuce, activate surveillance protocols and identify the best entry points for non-lethal intervention. Surveillance protocols initiated, Deuce confirmed. A preliminary assessment for non-lethal intervention will be available within the hour. Aaron and Jesse exchanged a quick glance, knowing that every second counted. The room buzzed with tension, the reality of their tasks settling heavily in the air. Dwayne stood straighter, his mind already spinning through contingencies, eyes burning with determination. Deuce's voice filled the room, steady and factual. Profile for operative Jonas Fields ready. A series of images and detailed bullet points appeared on the central screen, depicting a man of average height, lean build, and sharp eyes that spoke of a lifetime of observation and precision. Operative Jonas Fields, Deuce continued. Age 34. Background, former Army intelligence with a specialization in counter-surveillance and reconnaissance. Fields was discharged with honors after 10 years of service, and he was noted for his expertise in tactical infiltration and psychological profiling. He was recruited by the network 5 years ago due to his exceptional skill in high-risk covert operations. Known for his adaptability, Fields has successfully embedded himself in multiple environments without detection. Dwayne's eyes narrowed as he absorbed the information, each detail adding another layer of complexity to the mission. Deuce's voice droned on, reciting the more personal aspects of Fields' file. Operative Fields was born and raised in Prince George's County, Maryland. Personal connections, limited. Maintains a minimalist lifestyle, favoring practicality over attachments. Psychological evaluations suggest a strong moral code with a particular focus on justice, albeit one that operates outside conventional boundaries. Recent assignments include deep cover in high-profile law enforcement cases, positioning him as a community volunteer to build trust and gather intelligence. Dwayne glanced at the images that flashed by, Fields blending in with local groups, dressed in the unassuming attire of a neighborhood watch volunteer, his eyes continually assessing. Deuce, Dwayne said, voice low. What's his current location and cover? Current location, Charlotte, North Carolina. Cover identity, social worker and crisis intervention specialist for at-risk youth. Fields has integrated himself within local support networks, providing him access to both community leaders and local authorities. A heavy silence followed, each operative in the room piecing together the implications of Fields' cover and how close he was to his potential targets. Dwayne's mind raced through scenarios, each one fraught with the possibility of exposure and failure. "This is a man who doesn't miss," Aaron muttered, breaking the quiet. Dwayne nodded, the gravity of the situation settling over him. "Then we better not miss either." Dwayne's eyes shifted to the screen, his expression focused as he spoke. "Deuce, what's our best approach for bringing in Fields? He's not hiding, and by all accounts, he's actively working to create change in the community. What's the read on this?" Deuce's synthesized voice responded evenly. "Analysis indicates that Jonas Fields may no longer be following his original mission orders. He appears to have deviated, embedding himself within local government and community initiatives. Probability suggests he has ignored previous directives." Dwayne confirmed. The tension in the room was palpable. "Understood. Aaron, Jesse, I need you to get in touch with Fields. Make it clear that the mission is off. He needs to know we're pulling him back in." Aaron's voice cut through the silence in the room as he and Jesse connected to Jonas Fields. "Fields, this is Aaron Weaver. We need to talk. Mission status has changed." A beat of silence passed before Fields' familiar voice, calm and slightly weary, came through the line. "Aaron, Jesse, hello boys. I figured I'd hear from someone eventually. Let me guess, you're here to tell me the mission's off." "Exactly," Jesse said, his voice tight with urgency. "Stand down, Jonas. We need you to abort any operations in progress and come back to base." Fields let out a breath, a mix of relief and tension. "You don't need to worry about me. I haven't been actively pursuing the mission in the way you might think. I've been working within the system, creating change where it matters, through community engagement and local government." Aaron's eyes narrowed, as he shared a glance with Jesse. "Fields, we're not here to question your integrity. We are contacting you to tell you to stand down. We have a new director, and we handle things differently now." There was a pause, and then Fields' voice grew more serious. "We may have a problem then, fellas. There are 3 young men I recruited, locals. I saw potential in them, a drive to fight back, to make a difference and stand for something meaningful. They were to initiate the plan today. One of the young men is here with me, so you can take him off the board. The other 2 have been radio silent since everything is supposed to go down today. And for the record, we weren't going to off anyone. They were going to just send a message to them that we haven't forgotten what you've done." Jesse's expression darkened as he processed the information, turning back to Dwayne with a look of concern. "Dwayne, we've got a situation. Fields isn't the primary operative anymore. He has 2 recruits, and they're moving forward with the plan today." Dwayne's jaw tightened as he spoke into the comms. "Fields, we need to know exactly how they were planning to complete the mission. Details now." Fields' voice came through, tinged with a mix of resignation and urgency. "It's a coordinated effort. They plan to approach both targets separately, disguised as public service workers. One of them is set to confront Officer Raynor, posing as a community outreach officer. The other, Alan Reese, will be approached under the guise of a local repairman offering emergency services. It's subtle, close, and effective." Dwayne's mind raced as he absorbed the details. "Fields, you need to get to them before we do. You need to pull them out, make them understand that this isn't the way." "I'm on it," Fields replied, a note of determination in his voice. "But if I don't reach them in time, you have to be ready to step in." The main screen lit up with a flurry of activity as Jonas Fields appeared, concern etched across his face. He was already sifting through multiple options, trying to locate his recruits. "I can't reach them, Dwayne," Jonas said, frustration breaking through his otherwise composed voice. The urgency in the room was palpable. Dwayne turned to Max, his voice clipped and precise. "Max, who do we have in the area that we can activate now?" Max's fingers flew across his keyboard, eyes scanning through the network of operatives on standby. About 36 operatives can be activated at will and reach Jonas's location within the hour. Max replied. Dwayne's brows lifted slightly, impressed by the readiness of their network. He took a breath before speaking again. "Jonas, I need photos and names of these recruits now." Jonas nodded, typing quickly and sending the files over. The images of 2 young men appeared on the main screen. Dwayne's eyes studied their faces, committing them to memory. With a resolute expression, he began issuing orders. "Listen up, everyone. Here's what needs to happen. First, I want operatives to approach the former officers. You will be posing as FBI agents and tell them they're being placed in protective custody. Second, do not move them from their current locations. Instead, set up full surveillance around them. Third, circulate these photos to every agent in the area and have them try to persuade these recruits to stand down. If contact is made, patch Jonas in immediately so he can help de-escalate the situation." The room bubbled with energy as Dwayne's team sprang into action, each directive being relayed and executed. He looked directly at Jonas on the screen, his eyes hard. "Jonas, let's get one thing clear. You had no right to involve outsiders in this way. It puts the entire network at risk. We can't afford another misstep." Before Jonas could respond, Max's voice cut through the tension. "We've found one of the boys on a traffic cam. He's heading straight for the Charlotte Police Department headquarters." Dwayne's jaw clenched as he processed the information. "Then that means the other one is going after Raynor at his home," he said, turning to the operatives around him. "Everyone, move, now." The room erupted into a controlled frenzy as operatives prepared for immediate action. Dwayne stood in the center, eyes sharp and mind racing as he watched his plan unfold on the array of screens before him. This was their chance to stop the chaos before it started. Dwayne's eyes narrowed as he read the names aloud, voice clear and steady. "Michael Prunty and Chester White. These are our targets." The room fell silent, the weight of the task sinking into every operative present. Max's eyes darted between his monitors, fingers moving in a rapid dance over his keyboard. His gaze suddenly fixed on one particular screen, and a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "We have him on traffic cam. We can track his every movement." Downtown Charlotte has cameras at every intersection. Wait, I have an idea," he said, glancing up briefly before focusing back on the glowing interface. "It looks like Michael is listening to the radio in his car. If I can tap into the station's frequency," Dwayne's voice cut through the controlled chaos. "Do it. I trust you." Without wasting another second, Max's hands moved with precision, toggling between encrypted channels and command lines as he accessed the frequency. The room hummed with tense anticipation as they watched him work, the soft hum of computers and the occasional bleep of a new update filling the silence. "Got it," Max said, voice tight with concentration. The camera feed showed Michael's car still heading toward the Charlotte Police Department. The low, familiar sound of static filled the speakers in the control room, followed by the crackle of Jonas's voice. "Hello, Michael. Can you hear me?" Michael pulls his car over to the side of the road, now bewildered by what is happening. "This is Jonas. Stand down and come back to the office. I'll explain everything here." The control room held its collective breath, eyes glued to the screen as they watched for any reaction. A few seconds passed, and it felt like an eternity before Michael's car began to move. The signal indicator blinked, and the vehicle made a deliberate U-turn, heading in the opposite direction. "He's turning around," Max said, releasing a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The tension in the room deflated slightly, replaced by cautious relief as the camera showed Michael retracing his route, heading away from the precinct. Dwayne nodded once, a subtle affirmation that resonated with every operative in the room. One down. Now all eyes shifted to the other feed, where Chester White's location was being tracked in real time. The mission was far from over, but this small victory was a testament to their collective precision and determination. Dwayne's voice was steady yet sharp with urgency. "Move all surveillance that was headed to Michael over to Chester's target. We need eyes on him now. Set up roadblocks, shut down traffic lights in his projected path, whatever it takes to slow him down." The operatives sprang into action, their movements fluid and precise. Screens flickered as new maps and traffic grids appeared, routes being highlighted and adjusted in real time. The hum of keyboards and the low buzz of voices communicating through headsets filled the room. Max's fingers were already moving, pulling up data and making rapid calculations. "Got it, Dwayne. Redirecting all resources to Chester. This will take a minute." "Make it happen faster," Dwayne replied, his eyes darting between the screens that tracked the pulse of their mission. "My gut tells me we are running out of time." He knew they were working against an invisible clock, and every second that passed was another step closer to disaster. As Dwayne's eyes flicked to the screen, the image of Jonas dissolved into static, leaving an uneasy silence in its wake. "Max, did the connection drop?" Dwayne's voice was tense, the subtle edge betraying his concern. Max's fingers raced over the keyboard, eyes scanning lines of code. "No, sir. The connection is stable. Jonas just cut out." A prickle of anxiety ran down Dwayne's spine, but he forced himself to focus. "Give me an update on the operatives en route to Officer Raynor's residence." On the adjacent screen, a map of the area populated with blinking dots began to zoom in, each point representing an agent in motion. One of the field operatives' voice crackled through the comms. "We're 2 minutes out, approaching from the south. No signs of disturbance at the residence yet, but we're ready to move on your orders." Dwayne's jaw tightened. They needed to act before anything unexpected happened, and Jonas going dark wasn't a good sign. The agents arrived at the quiet suburban neighborhood, the street lined with identical homes, bathed in the soft glow of morning light. As they approached the target residence, their pace slowed, eyes scanning every detail. The driveway was empty, and the front door was ajar, swaying slightly in the cold February breeze. They exchanged tense glances, a silent signal passing between them as they moved into position. Peering through the front window, one agent's eyes widened, and he mouthed to the other agent, "He's inside." From their vantage point, they could see Chester standing in the middle of the living room, his frame tense, eyes locked on Officer Raynor, who sat in a chair with his hands bound, sweat beading on his forehead. Beside Raynor, his wife and 2 children huddled together, fear etched into their faces. Chester's gun was trained on them, his expression unyielding, a mixture of rage and cold determination. One of the agents whispered into his comm, "Target confirmed. Chester White is holding Officer Raynor and his family hostage." The scene was set and the stakes laid bare. The air crackled with the weight of what was to come. Dwayne's eyes remained fixed on the screen as the agent on the comms confirmed that Chester was inside Raynor's residence. The tension in the room was palpable, the soft hum of machinery underscoring the gravity of the situation. On another monitor, social media feeds lit up in real time with shaky videos, their comment sections racing with speculation and fear. Max, wide-eyed and urgent, looked up from his station. "Too late, boss. It's already streaming on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Rednote, and TikTok from every house on the block." Dwayne's mind raced, evaluating the possibilities and risks. He knew the presence of social media made everything infinitely more complicated. One wrong move and it would be broadcast to the world, sparking immediate outrage. "Emily," he whispered, then louder, "I need to call Emily. Now." With a swift motion, he pressed the call button and waited, the dial tone ringing in his ear as he glanced at the feed of Raynor's house. The trembling, unfocused images from phones and drones showed the silhouette of Chester inside, moving methodically. The tension was thick, a silent storm building in every frame. The line clicked, and Emily's voice, calm but sharp, cut through. "Agent Williams, this is unexpected." "Emily," Dwayne began, his voice steady but urgent, "I don't have time for explanations. My people are on the ground in Charlotte, posing as FBI agents. We're trying to de-escalate a potentially lethal situation. We have a former officer and his family being held hostage." There was another pause, the weight of the situation settling in. Dwayne could almost feel Emily's calculating mind work through the information. "You're telling me this? Why, Dwayne?" Her tone was steely. "Because if this goes south, I don't want you blindsided. You need to know I'm trying to stop this. If I fail, there will be questions, and you need to be prepared." A heavy silence followed, only broken by the distant sound of Max's keyboard clicks and the muted hum of chatter as operatives scrambled. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice low and deliberate. "Understood. Do what you have to do, but know that if this spills over, there's only so much I can protect you from." Dwayne's eyes shifted to the screen as Chester's shadow paced back and forth, his posture rigid, a gun glinting in his hand. Every second felt like an eternity. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Dwayne whispered, ending the call and looking up at the team. "All right, people, listen up." Dwayne's voice cut through the tension in the control room, sharp and urgent. "I need every agent with a camera to move to the front of the house. I need to see what's going on inside now." The command was relayed through earpieces, and on the screens in front of Dwayne, live footage began to shift and stutter as agents repositioned. Max's fingers flew over the keyboard, coordinating the feeds and stabilizing the images. Slowly, the multiple camera angles converged to give Dwayne a clear view of the situation unfolding inside. Chester was pacing, his eyes flicking between the terrified faces of Raynor and his family. The agents outside held their breath, their stances ready but unmoving, waiting for the word. Dwayne's eyes narrowed as he took in every detail, the position of Chester's weapon, the proximity of the hostages, the tightness in Officer Raynor's posture. His mind raced with scenarios, each playing out like a rapid-fire reel in his head. This was a delicate moment, and one wrong move could tip everything into chaos. Dwayne's jaw clenched as he strained to hear the dialogue coming through the speakers. The voices crackled and buzzed, making every word a vital clue in the tense standoff. But despite the audio feed, he was blind to the visuals. Chester and Raynor were just out of the camera's line of sight. Chester's voice was rough and unyielding, resonating with barely contained rage. "You think saying I'm sorry is enough, Raynor? You think it erases everything?" There was a pause, filled only by the soft sobs of Raynor family. Raynor's voice, shaky but sincere, came next. "I know it doesn't, but I am sorry. I relived that day more times than I can count. If I could go back, I would. I swear I would." Dwayne leaned closer to the screen, the strain evident in his posture. He needed eyes in that room. Max, can we pivot any of the drones to get a visual inside? Dwayne's voice was low but laced with urgency. Max's fingers flew over the controls, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. Trying, but every move risks being seen by Chester. He's wired and keyed up, Dwayne. We don't want to trigger him. Dwayne nodded, his eyes fixed on the monitors as if willing the technology to push past its limits. Every second of dialogue told him more about Chester's state of mind, and every second that passed without a clear view made the situation feel like a countdown he had no control over. Dwayne leaned forward, tension radiating from every line of his body. Max, is there any way we can block these social media feeds? We need to get control of the situation before it spirals. Max's eyes darted between the multiple screens in front of him, fingers pausing midair. I'm working on it, but it won't be easy. We're talking about an entire neighborhood's worth of Wi-Fi and mobile signals. We could use the drones to create a localized jamming field, but it won't last long. We'd only have a small window before it triggers alarms across network providers. Dwayne's gaze hardened, calculating the risk. How small a window are we talking? 5, maybe 10 minutes at best, Max replied, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. And even that's pushing it. Dwayne exhaled sharply, eyes narrowing. Do it. That might be all the time we need. We can't let this play out in front of an audience. Max nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Deploying drones now. Signal interference will begin in 90 seconds. Dwayne watched the screens, a steely resolve settling over him as the countdown began. Every second counted, and they were racing against time to bring this under control. Dwayne's voice echoed through the control room, urgent and commanding. All operatives on the ground, listen up. If you don't have a camera feed linked for me to see, start evacuating every house within a 100-yard radius of the target location. I repeat, full containment is a priority. We need to clear the area now. The operatives, trained and efficient, sprang into action. Their movements were swift as they fanned out, knocking on doors and guiding startled residents away from their homes. Some operatives used hand gestures to signal to each other, ensuring no corner was left unchecked. The street began to clear, confusion spreading among onlookers as they were hurried out of their houses. Containment units. Report in as soon as the perimeter is secure, Dwayne continued, his eyes glued to the fragmented camera feeds. The tension in the room was thick, every breath synchronized with the urgency of their mission. Max's voice cut through the background noise. Drones are in position, jamming signals in 3, 2, 1. Dwayne's jaw tightened as he watched the feed stabilize, hoping that the last-minute containment effort would buy them enough time to de-escalate the crisis unfolding before their eyes. As the signals were blocked, silence fell over the neighborhood. The operatives held their positions, eyes sharp and alert as they waited for any sign of movement. Suddenly, a voice rang out over a megaphone, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Chester," the voice called, steady but imbued with urgency. "Chester White, come outside. It's Jonah." Inside the house, Chester's eyes widened in shock. His grip on Raynor tightened, the officer's face pale and sweating. Chester's breath came in ragged gasps, his eyes darting wildly around the room. Tears welled up in his eyes, mixing with anger and fear. "Don't do this, man!" Jonah's voice came again, softer now, imploring. "I know what you're feeling. I know why you're here. But it doesn't have to end this way." Chester's shoulders shook, his whole body trembling as he processed the voice of someone he trusted. He pushed Raynor toward the door, keeping a tight hold on him as they stepped into the open. The harsh winter light cast deep shadows across their faces, the cold air biting at their skin. Operatives stood frozen, eyes flicking between Chester and Jonah, who had positioned himself in the front yard with his hands raised in surrender. Jonah's expression was firm but kind, a thin veneer over the desperation simmering beneath the surface. "Chester, look at me," Jonah said, his voice breaking slightly. "I know you're scared. I know you're hurt. But this isn't the answer. We need you to come back with us. We need you to be safe." Chester's eyes glistened with unshed tears, his chest heaving as anger warred with vulnerability. His grip on Raynor faltered for a brief moment, uncertainty flickering across his face. The operatives remained poised, ready to intervene if necessary, but they knew that this delicate moment could only be handled by Jonah. The entire control room held its breath as Dwayne watched, willing the situation to de-escalate without further bloodshed. Dwayne's eyes were locked on the monitors, reading every nuance of Chester's body language. The young man's shaking hands, his erratic breathing, and the way his eyes darted between Jonah and the operatives told a story of desperation and raw emotion. Jonah's posture was tense but open, communicating empathy and the willingness to help. "Max," Dwayne said, voice low and urgent, "cut the signal blockers." Max turned, his eyebrows knitting together in confusion. "Are you sure, Dwayne? We've just secured the area." "I'm sure," Dwayne replied, a hint of conviction cutting through his tone. "Do it now." Max's hesitation only lasted a beat before he nodded, fingers flying over the keyboard. The low hum of the blockers faded, leaving an almost tangible silence in the control room. The screens flickered for a moment, and the operatives on the ground braced themselves as the digital blockade was lifted. Dwayne leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he watched Chester's reaction, trusting his instincts. The situation was teetering on the edge of chaos, and any sudden movement could tip it over. But Dwayne knew that the emotional connection between Jonah and Chester needed a chance to play out without interference. The atmosphere in the room thickened as they waited, hoping that his gamble would pay off. Dwayne's voice cut through the control room with a commanding presence. "All agents, hold your positions. Cease evacuation efforts immediately," he ordered, his eyes fixed on the live feed. "Keep the families at a safe distance, but allow them to see what's happening. We need witnesses to this." The operatives on the ground hesitated only for a split second before shifting their focus. They herded the families back to the edges of the block, maintaining a clear line of sight to the house. Parents clutched their children close, worry etched across their faces as they peered through windows and gathered in small clusters on front lawns. Dwayne knew the power of public visibility. If this played out under the scrutiny of the community, it would force transparency and deter any reckless actions. The tension hummed through the control room, a silent hope that Jonah could reach Chester before the moment tipped beyond saving. Dwayne's jaw clenched as he watched Chester's expression shift, the young man glancing at the crowd now forming a cautious barrier. This was more than just a crisis. It was a spectacle, and Dwayne knew they had to control it without losing their humanity. Dwayne's eyes stayed glued to the monitors as Jonas stepped forward, his voice steady, radiating calm and understanding. The tension in the room was palpable. Each second stretched on, echoing with the shallow breathing and quiet murmurs of the team around him. On the screen, Chester's grip on Officer Raynor faltered. Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the sweat as he choked back sobs, fear and rage warring within him. Raynor stood motionless, eyes wide, his own hands raised in a display of vulnerability. The crowd that had gathered held their collective breath, the silence pressing down like a tangible force. Jonas spoke again, his tone even and warm, like an older brother reaching out. "Chester, we're here to make things right. You're not alone in this, but this isn't the way. Let him go, and let's talk." The shift was almost imperceptible, but Dwayne saw it. The tension in Chester's shoulders released, his grip loosening as if a weight had lifted. Raynor stumbled forward, gasping as Jonas stepped between them, putting himself as a barrier of trust. Dwayne allowed a tight breath to escape, relief spreading through the room like a wave. There was no need for further intervention, no gunfire, no sirens tearing through the morning air. It was over, and it was peaceful. The crowd outside began to murmur, some shouting words of gratitude, others weeping from relief. "Good work, Jonas," Dwayne whispered, eyes still on the screen as the scene unfolded, a testament to the power of understanding over violence. The tension outside Raynor's home dissipates as Chester's grip on the gun loosens, his trembling fingers releasing the weapon into Jonas's waiting hands. Jonas moves carefully, his every motion deliberate and calming as he secures the firearm. Chester stumbles back, his body shaking violently as if the weight of everything he's carried finally collapses on him all at once. A guttural cry tears from his chest, raw and unrestrained, echoing through the quiet neighborhood. It's a cry of pain, anger, and helplessness, a sound that pulls at the hearts of everyone watching. Jonas steps forward, his arms open and his expression unwaveringly compassionate. Without hesitation, he wraps Chester in a firm embrace, holding the younger man tightly as his sobs rack his body. "Let it out, son. It's okay. We will get through this." Jonas murmurs, his voice low and soothing. "You've been carrying this for too long. I've got you now." Chester buries his face in Jonas's shoulder, his cries muffled but still powerful, his body heaving as years of pent-up anger and grief pour out in waves. Jonas doesn't flinch, his hands steady on Chester's back, gently patting in a rhythm meant to ground him. The operatives on the scene remain still, their postures relaxing as they witness the moment. There's no need for intervention now. Jonas has control, not through force, but through connection. "Chester," Jonas whispers, his tone resolute yet kind, "I know it feels like the world's been against you, like no one sees your pain, but I see you, I hear you, and I'm here." Chester clings to Jonas, his cries gradually quieting into soft, uneven breaths. His body sags in exhaustion, the adrenaline fading, leaving him vulnerable and human. Jonas adjusts his hold, keeping Chester upright as he supports his weight. The crowd watching from a distance murmurs softly, their tension easing as the scene unfolds with unexpected tenderness. Dwayne, observing from the control room, exhales deeply, his hands gripping the edge of the console as he watches Chester's vulnerability on display. Jonas gently pulls back, enough to look Chester in the eye but without letting him go entirely. "We're going to take this one step at a time, all right? But for now, let's get you somewhere safe." Chester nods, his face streaked with tears but his expression softening. For the first time, there's a glimmer of something in his eyes. Hope. Jonas keeps one arm around him as they step away from the scene, ensuring Chester knows he's not walking this path alone. The operatives hold their positions, letting the moment sink in, as Jonas and Chester disappear from view, their silhouettes fading into the calm after the storm. Dwayne's voice crackled over the comms, firm but tempered with relief. "All units, stand down. I repeat, stand down. Initiate de-escalation protocols immediately." The tension in the air dissipated like a receding storm, leaving a strange calm in its wake. He continued, addressing his operatives directly. "No sudden movements. Ensure a safe perimeter and begin clearing the area slowly. This is now a containment and support operation. Anyone with medical or psychological training should step in to provide assistance if necessary." The operatives, some still catching their breath, moved with quiet efficiency, their training taking over. The air was filled with murmurs and the sound of footsteps as they began to shift focus from intervention to support. Families that had been evacuated were gently guided back to their homes, reassured by calm, practiced words. "Max," Dwayne said, his voice steady but softer now, "make sure the drones maintain an observational distance, no closer than necessary. I don't want any further escalation." Max's fingers flew over the keyboard as he responded. "Understood, Dwayne." Adjusting drone positions now. Dwayne took a moment to breathe deeply, his eyes scanning the monitors as Chester was gently approached by Jonas, who extended a hand, speaking in low, soothing tones. Raynor remained on his knees, silent, the weight of his actions pressing down on him like an unmovable force. The operatives around them moved slowly, their presence now less of a threat and more of a safeguard. "Let's make sure everyone here gets home safely tonight," Dwayne said, his voice carrying a resolve that resonated throughout the room. Aaron and Jesse entered the room with an urgency that cut through the stillness like a blade. Aaron's brow was furrowed, a sheen of sweat on his face, while Jesse's eyes were sharp and focused, darting between the monitors and Dwayne. "We have a problem," Aaron said, his voice low but weighted. The room, which had been settling into a quieter rhythm after the de-escalation at Raynor's house, suddenly felt charged again. Dwayne looked up from the screen, eyes narrowing as he read the concern in their expressions. "What is it?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with a hint of apprehension. Aaron's eyes flicked to the phone in his hand, the tension in his expression deepening. He held it up, screen illuminated, and a call already in progress. "It's Rachel," he said, his voice laced with urgency. "You need to hear this." Dwayne's pulse quickened as he stepped forward, reaching for the phone. He glanced at Aaron and Jesse, their tense postures affirming the gravity of whatever Rachel had to say. Pressing the speaker button, Dwayne held the phone between them, the room falling into a taut silence as Rachel's voice crackled through. Rachel, tinged with irritation and filled with southern flair, came through clearly over the speaker. As I was telling your two handsome friends, since I got off the phone with Celeste, I've been waiting for my travel itinerary. Usually, it's already in my inbox by now, so I was wondering when it's coming through. Can you tell me why I'm still here? Because I'm so ready to get out of Utah. There's only like 5 black people here, and I'm one of them. Dwayne's brows furrowed, a wave of confusion sweeping over him. He exchanged a quick glance with Aaron and Jesse, who mirrored his perplexed expression. Utah? Dwayne echoed, the word heavy on his tongue. I thought you were undercover in Michigan. There was a brief, incredulous pause on Rachel's end before she let out a scoff. No, that's my twin sister, Rochelle. She's in the network, too. She's the one undercover at the prison. Why do y'all always get us mixed up? Her tone was biting, laced with frustration. A sudden jolt of realization hit Dwayne like a bolt of lightning, freezing him in place. The room around him seemed to blur, the weight of the revelation crashing down on him. The case he had thought was resolved wasn't over. The pieces he'd meticulously put together were wrong, and it meant one thing. A man was about to die, and they were running out of time to stop it.